Britain, the family of Alabama. Thank you, Sir Chair. Sexting. Sexting. The act of sending sexually explicit messages via mobile phone, email, social media sites, various things, maybe, possibly. We're not really sure. The punishment for sexting, we're also not very sure of. In one state, maybe jail time. In another state, maybe a fine. In yet another state, a slap on the wrist. I don't understand. The material act of sexting does not change based on what state you're in. So why does the punishment? If a person in Alabama is sexting a person in California and the person in Alabama goes to jail and the person in California gets a slap on the wrist and ooh, maybe you shouldn't do that again, I just don't think that's logical. So I propose that in a regular session of Congress, legislation be presented that will federalize, that will generalize, that will lay a blanket law over the United States for sexting. We will say this is what sexting is and this is how we will deal with it. I propose no specific punishment. I propose no punishment at all. I simply say that it needs to be the same for every state. If the material act doesn't change, the punishment should not change. The punishment should not change. With that, I yield the remainder of my time to the chair.
Delegation. Thank you, Sir Chair. While I agree with the intent of the author, I must state the purpose of the law is to protect the innocent and not to punish the criminal. Let me ask you a question. Do you want to throw the fate of your children in the hands of the federal government? I don't think you do. The ethical debate of sexting is still underway, but the majority opinion is that where it is consensual and non-harmful to the individuals involved, it should not be punished judicially. If we take this to the federal level, there is a very high chance Congress will make harsher rulings than is fair, and it will become tyranny to our young adults. And we will be the instigators of injustice, and we will forsake our American values in this manner. Child pornography laws are to protect the innocent, the pure, those who are most at risk in society, not to punish young adults for reckless behavior and a heat of passion. I say all this for a reason. If Congress passes a federal law regarding sexting, it could set a dangerous standard. It will send a message that the federal government has the right to rule over states and their decisions regarding moral laws. It will state that young adults' natural behavior can be criminalized. This is just a new form of things that people have been doing since time, the beginning of time. People have been sending messages of this nature, whether through writing or pictographs on cable. This is just a new form. The best way we can handle this is to let states handle this through discussion and debate through state laws. By allowing the states to work on this themselves, we are able to come to a conclusive opinion and definition of what sexting is through each state. It also allows states to retain their independence and keeps the federal government out of our bedroom and our lives. This is a time to consider whether our young adult sexuality is natural or criminal, and how we're going to act upon the research information that we have. We are now at a critical time where freedom and rights for all peoples are being considered in our country. Should we not also consider the impact that young adults' freedoms have? Should we punish consensual messaging? I don't think so. I'm of the opinion that the federal government is able to handle this. They will come to a much harsher ruling and opinion than is just. I urge everyone to consider that this should not be the best way to handle this. I yield my time to the chair.
Gentlemen, recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Sir Chair. Jake Freeland from the California delegation. I reserve my right to yield the remainder of my time to the author's summation.
You have that right.
Let's take a trip back in time. The year is 1787, and the drafters of the Constitution are considering what to include as the rights of the federal government. They decide on the right to tax citizens, the ability to coin money, and the means to regulate sexting. Wait, scratch that. Because scratch that last one. Because the constitutional writers couldn't even imagine a world where teenagers spent their free time sending nude pictures to their friends. Indeed, the times have changed since 1787, and with it, the federal government's jurisdiction has changed as well. The federal government already mandates federal definitions and punishments for over 60 state-level crimes. And most of these crimes are related to modern drugs or emerging problem drugs because these are crimes that the federal government should have the power to regulate but could not have possibly seen coming over 200 years ago. Sexting is yet another one of these crimes that the federal government should have jurisdiction over but can currently not regulate because the Constitution did not mention it. It's taking place in every state and even across state lines, which, by the way, inherently puts it under the federal government's jurisdiction thanks to the Commerce Clause of the United States Constitution. So it's clear that the federal government does have the constitutional power to pass this proposal, but why should it? Because a federal sexting policy clarifies the law and simplifies an insanely messy legal ambiguity. Not only does the definition of sexting vary from state to state, but so too do the punishments for being convicted. In Utah, a teen can be charged with a felony and classified as a sex offender for sending or receiving nude images via text message. In Alabama, there's no punishment. This is an enormous discrepancy in the law. This isn't like shoplifting where your sentence might differ by 1 or 2 days in jail. This is a discrepancy that is so large it creates a gap in the law that our federal government needs to close. Once again, just because the Founding Fathers couldn't have seen virtual sex messages coming does not mean that the federal government does not have the power to regulate it. Thank you.
Hey, Green Florida delegation. I must remind you all that this is a country of freedom of choice. If the people, specifically minors, feel the need to sex, then that is their choice. Sure, sexting alludes to sexual acts, but if you're going to place a ban on sexting among minors, you might as well put a ban on sex among minors. Also, if you're going to penalize sexting, then you might as well put penalties for sex among minors. Sending nude photos to your boyfriend over your phone is your choice. And even though that nude photos are considered porn, we might as well penalize porn if you're going to penalize sexting. Since when has the concept of sex become a federal crime? Sex is supposed to be celebrated between a man and a woman. It is up to the parents to educate their children on the use of protection, as well as censor what they do. If parents don't want their kids sexting, then they can educate their children about the.
Will the gentleman suspend?
The government is going to monitor teenagers on sexting and penalize them as if they got a speeding ticket. You're entitled to your personal rights, and I yield my remaining time to the chair.